Do you ever wonder why you're doing what you do in life? Do you wish that you could be really happy and passionate about what you do? Or maybe you already are and you want to expand in a different direction. Hi, I'm Barbara Ann, host of What the Why? I love what I do. A lot of that has to do with my story, my journey to this point in life. And guess what? Everybody has a story. So please join me for conversations with leaders from all walks of life about what they do, and more importantly, why they do it, how they found their core purpose, their passion, their mission in life. And if you're looking for your own, maybe you'll get some great suggestions on how you too can find your why. Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of What the Why with Barbara Ann. If you haven't seen us before, our show features conversations with diverse leaders from all walks of life about why they do what they do and how they figured out this was their purpose. Maybe you're sick and tired of feeling sick and tired, or you feel stuck and you want to get unstuck. All of our leaders have something similarly or somewhat similarly in common with you. And today's guest is no exception. I'm super excited to introduce you all to C.I. Dixon. C.I. is a internationally known, dynamic, highly informative speaker and trainer. His company has trained more than 10,000 clients. I mean, you thought Purposeful had done a lot? No. 10,000 clients in techniques to measurably improve their performance, utilizing the Dixon Motivational Management's exclusive training programs. Mr. Dixon has spoken at several schools, government organizations, private businesses. The topics of these speeches have included everything from goal setting to personal leadership, time management. I mean, totally. One of the things that I'm super passionate about, youth leadership, effective communication skills, team building, selling strategies. His interest in our youth, again, something I'm super passionate about in the work that I've done with Braven and others. His interest has shown through his work in the Salvation Army and Boys and Girls Club of America and other nonprofit organizations that investing in the youth of our future is really what is going to continue to sustain us going forward as a species, if I'm being honest. And
Yes.
so, without further ado, please join me in welcoming today's very special guest, C.I. Dixon. So, yay! Round of
Hey,
applause.
hello everyone.
So, welcome. And it's interesting, as our audience knows. Thank you, audience, for watching and listening wherever platform you are uh, downloading this from, or playing back this episode on. We always ask our guests from the get-go, after hearing what you've accomplished. Don't imagine that little C.I. Dixon saw himself doing this when he grew up. First- so my first question to you, when you were little, before you helped more than 10,000 clients, what did you want to be when you were growing up?
Well, you know what? I wanted to be a professional football player. That was the passion and desire in my heart. But I'll tell you, Barbara Ann, I had a tug to which I didn't want to do, but I had a tug that I would be a minister.
Okay.
And my father was a Baptist minister for over 40 years, and I had a inkling towards the pulpit, but I did not want to do it. And so when I say a tug, I had a tug that, you know what, even though you want to be a football player, you may end up being a preacher.
Mhm. And it's funny because that's something you and when we first met, we talked about, we have that in common, like both sides
Yes,
of my family. Except for it's
that's right.
yeah, I've got the Baptist, the Pentecostal, the AME on one side, and the Episcopal on the other. So yeah, and how did you get from wanting to be a football player with a tug on ministry to what really is, in essence, a ministry of a different type?
Well, you know what? And that's, in fact, I'm going to answer all three of those not at once, but in sequence.
Go
Okay.
for it.
I had an opportunity to have several scholarship offers to go and play football, and I thought, man, this is what I want to do. And I had some very big colleges that wanted me to come play, and then I had two little bitty schools. I say little bitty schools. It was West Point and Air Force Academy.
Oh, yeah, those are tiny.
Well, as it relates to the
Yes,
University of Tennessee,
sure.
okay. And I wanted to go to the University of Tennessee, and they were going to give me a scholarship, but I wanted to go play for the Volunteers. And one day, my parents sit me down, and this was a time in life, and probably if you can see me on the screen, you know that I'm not a spring chicken, but I'm not an old man. This was a time in life where you actually listen to your parents. And my parents sit me down and said, "You know what, son? You're not the biggest guy." When I was in high school, I weighed about 165, 168 pounds. And that's not really Division One college football size. And they said, so you could get hurt if you go to one of these big schools. And not only that, you have other siblings that we're paying for college for, and we can't afford to pay for you. But we're going to let you go to any college you want as long as it's West Point or the Air Force Academy.
Oh, okay. Any college you want as long as it's one of those two.
They said because once you play for them for 1 year, they can't take your scholarship.
Oh, okay.
And I thought, oh my Lord. And I had all these posters on my wall from University of Tennessee, from Vanderbilt, from Mississippi State. I didn't have any posters on my wall from the Air Force Academy at West Point. And I decided that I would rather fly a plane than be in a tank. And so I chose the Air Force Academy.
Okay.
And I had an opportunity to go and play there, and also perhaps the strongest relationships that I have to this day I formed there. The education was top notch. I tell everyone it looks better as you're watching the parade versus doing the parade. Okay, so but that worked out okay. Then I said, okay, well, let's do this Air Force thing for a bit. And I wasn't as crazy about the Air Force. I never thought I was going to be crazy about it anyway. But I said, let's do this Air Force thing for a little bit. But I still had a little tug on my heart, Barbara Ann, like, okay. And probably this was the third or fourth time I brought it up to my dad. I said, you know what? I think I need to preach. And he said, well, son, if you can do anything other than preaching, do that. And I said, what do you mean? He
Mm,
says, well, some preachers went, some were sent, but you want to be called.
yeah.
He goes, and if you're not called, you won't stick to it.
Mhm.
And that was the last conversation we had about me preaching. And I said, okay, then. Well, I'm going to do something else. And then when I found an opportunity to get involved with a training franchise and start to do training and development, I realized, I said, you know what? You actually are preaching, but in a different context.
Mhm.
And you're touching people that'll never walk in a church.
Yes.
So even though you thought you were going to be like your dad doing that thing, you're doing your thing, but you're doing it in a way that was designed for you.
Mm. Well, and kudos to your dad for providing that kind of spiritual guidance.
Yes. Yes, because so many people, they decide that they want to do this, they go to seminary, they do this, they do that, And as I said, I had a calling on my heart to help people.
Mhm.
And the only avenue I really knew at that time was, well, you got to be a preacher. But another avenue opened up to me.
Yeah.
And it was like, oh, you can help many people this way.
So what was it about what you're doing now that called you?
It was somewhat serendipitous. I don't know if it called me or I called it. I tell people that's how you match up to the profession that you're supposed to be. It calls
Ah,
you and you call it. Okay.
mhm,
And I was getting ready to get out of the Air Force and I was looking through the Air Force Times and in the back it says we're looking for people like in the employment section that have a background in communications, organizational behavior, yada, 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 to be a consultant making $50,000 a year. And I thought, oh my goodness, $50,000 a year. That's a home run on this Air Force salary. I mean, that's a home run. And so I called them up. They said, come down here, interview with us. I interviewed with them. And it was a 3-day interview process. And Barbara
mhm,
Ann, this is how naive I was. It wasn't until the third day that I realized they were trying to sell me a franchise. The whole time I thought, oh, you're going to hire me and pay me $50,000. But instead, they wanted me to give up money and then I would make money if I sold the training materials. I was so far into it and I was so excited about the opportunity that I borrowed from my parents. I did this, I did that, bought the franchise, and that's how I got involved in the training business. And once I got involved in the training business, one of the greatest fears of people is to speak in public. But
yes.
once I got involved in it, it was like, you are ducking water. This is for you.
Mm,
And that's how I found it. And then I also realized that in working and training and helping people on a professional basis, I also made an impact, a significant impact on their personal life.
mm. Yeah, yeah, that's not, yeah, I mean, we're literally talking about human transformation. So it makes sense that even, the work that you were doing, even if doing it with corporations, would involve a level of helping people change their lives.
Yes.
And so yes, I hear and see and value what you're saying in terms of you're basically doing a different form of ministry in some ways.
Yes. It's you know what there's a book that's written. I don't know if it's okay for me to say it.
Sure.
There's a
Yep.
book that's written. It was written many years ago by Ed Silvoso, and it's called Business is a Calling.
Mm,
And some people, their calling is what they do in business.
yep. Yes.
Yeah.
And so much so, a shout out to Genius is Common. And we're my company, Purpose Built Solutions and Evolutions, is a supporter of that network, which fully believes that genius can show up in any capacity,
Yes.
whether it's how you clean or operate a salon to the thousands of people that you're helping through your training and development franchise. Uh, so once you realize, let's pivot back to that.
Okay.
Once you realize that that's what they were doing, that they were selling you a franchise, obviously you moved forward. But to the extent that you can recall, walk us through that moment when you finally had that, oh, this isn't a job. You're asking me to be an entrepreneur.
Huh. It was the last 2 hours of the last day. And they pulled me in the room and I was talking to the guy who had been he was our host and he says okay he says well we decided that versus you being an associate for the organization we'd like for you to open up a franchise in your market. I thought well and how much is that?
Uh-huh.
And they told me, and again, I was so, I mean, I basically, my entrepreneurial skills were I had a lawnmower business when I was a child, and then I ran a Dairy Queen before I went to college. That was about it.
Hmm.
And they told me, and I said, well, I don't have that. But of course, they wanted to close me. And it was like, basically, you can't get that out of me. And I had them talk to my parents.
Mm.
And my parents, of course, were a little bit wiser than I was. And my parents got them to sell me a used franchise for like
Oh,
one third the price.
wow. I didn't see now all the work that I've done over the years. I didn't even know that was an option.
But guess what?
But
I mean, you're just buying knowledge and books and tapes at that time. They were cassette tapes.
okay.
So
Mhm.
instead of getting all the courses, I got 50% of the courses.
Oh,
So it was basically a sale that we're going to start you here, but we'll go to where we have to get a yes to.
okay.
But of course, I did not know that. Nor did I know that that was their recruiting process to sell their franchises.
Oh,
So I was in deep, Barbara Ann, before I realized that, oh, this is what's going on. But I
wow.
love the product, I love the service, and I thought it was a good fit. So even though the sale was a bit, oh, I don't want to use the word shady or seductive, but it was not 100% on point,
Okay.
I
Yeah,
was sold.
yeah. I was gonna say, um, slightly non-transparent.
Yes. Yes, it was not transparent.
No. And yet here you are, and all these years later, and uh, in addition to obviously scaling to a full company, you've written a book.
Yes, I've written a book, but I need to make another point too. In
Sure.
after I bought the franchise about oh, about 10, 12 years later, I branched out with my own material.
Mm-hmm.
And they did train me. So they taught me how to sell. They taught me ways to facilitate training classes. And they taught me a lot of things. And I thought, you know what? You're doing this for them. Why don't you do it for yourself?
Yep.
And that's when I started up Dixon Motivational Management.
Awesome.
Okay.
Yeah.
So now back to your question. Yes, I had an opportunity to write a book, and I guess that's why you had me on your podcast. That's a story
Well,
all by itself. Uh,
one of many reasons why I had you on the podcast. I mean, first of all, look, the logo's cool, the story's cool. How many people want to go from being a preacher football player to owning a franchise to starting their own company to writing a book? I mean, there's some, but I wouldn't say there's a lot of you.
okay. You know what? A lot of people want now this is the PK in me, preacher's kid in me.
Hmm.
Um, when you're Mr. Everything, when you're in high school, like all those movies, you're the high school hero, you're the king of the town, everybody wants to give you a free cheeseburger. You can have a tendency to become arrogant.
No way.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Big football hero.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
My dad was on the Eagles farm team. All my cousins and uncles
yeah.
played. So, yeah, no, I don't know anything about any of
Yeah,
that.
well, and but my dad, he really, I mean, if he saw 1 inch of pride come out of me, Barbara Ann, boom, he slammed it down. And so I was conditioned not to read your own newspaper clippings. And,
Again,
and
smart dad.
yeah, and I've kind of kept that to this day.
Wow.
You know, a lot of times, and Walter Payton, the great Walter Payton, great Chicago Bear football player. Walter Payton said, when you're good, you talk about it, but when you're great, other people talk about it.
Yes. Yes.
And people will say, oh, CI, you need to talk about the fact that Zig Ziglar was your mentor and you knew him personally and yada, yada, yada. And I go, if people want to know, they can Google me and find out. But
You know, just as an aside, it's so reassuring that because there are times people are like, "Well, what are you?" And I'm just like, "Well, just Google me or look me up on LinkedIn." And
yeah,
and I've had people say, "That's arrogant." And I'm like, "Is it though?"
no.
Yeah, that's kind of how I feel. And
Yeah,
so I feel very validated by you right now.
yeah. It's very arrogant to every time you meet someone say, here's my 50 accomplishments from the time I got out of high school.
Yeah, yes, exactly.
Yeah. And so I don't want to do that. All right.
Yes.
So
Yeah. And how
yeah.
many times, and you can probably also empathize with how many times have you been somewhere and people are like, well, tell me what you do. And it's like,
Oh gosh.
there's podcasts about it. Yeah.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Tell me what you do. You know what? And particularly, we recently moved to Florida 3 years ago. And it's so funny that when you move to a new area, people size you up like a used car salesman
Oh,
or
yeah.
a salesperson. All right, what's your job? What do you do? Da, 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 so I know what cars to show you. It's like, hey, look, I'm C.I Dixon. I'm your next door neighbor. That's it for now. If you need a cup of sugar, call me, or vice versa.
So, C.I. Dixon, I know you've had some major clients, and then of course there's the work that you have done with the Salvation Army and the Boys and Girls Club. And I do want to also make sure we do talk a little bit about the book.
Okay.
So, uh, of those things, uh, what would you say you would like to talk most about?
Oh gosh. Let's just talk about them.
Okay,
Okay. So let's talk
so
about the book.
let's
It's
talk about the book.
the book. I'll tell you how the book came about. In fact, that's in the introduction of the book. Um, I would call my mother and my parents, I don't know, they maybe looked at one of my training manuals of the cover, but I don't think they ever went through one. Okay.
Oh.
But some of the best secrets I learned from them. There's something to be said about wisdom. And I would call my mother up typically, oh, probably 3, 4 times a week on the way home from work. Because when I lived in Dallas, it was 22 miles from my office to home. So it gave me time to call her. And I would go over what did not work that day.
Mm.
Oh, I had this customer who said no, this person who wouldn't see me on a sales call, this bad class. And one day, and this is going to lead me to the book, by the way. One day she said, son, well, do you ever think about what went well? And I said, well, yeah, I do. She says, from here on out, when you call me, she said, I want you to tell me what went well. Don't tell me what went bad. And Barbara Ann, and this may not show up good on the screen, to this day, for over 20 years, so
Wow.
15, 20 years, I keep a notebook. And at the end of every day, I write down what were the best things that happened today, what went well. Now,
Talk about some serious life advice.
yeah, what went well? So when I leave this desk for the day, when I leave this office, I'm going to leave thinking about what went well. Now, when I first started that, my mind still went to, well, you didn't do this, you didn't do that, da, da, da. But over years of repetition, I was able to say, hey, it was some good stuff. So one day, once again, I was talking to my mother and I was telling her about these struggles. And she said, well, son, she said, life gives you struggles and you can't climb a smooth mountain. And I thought, Lord, that's pretty deep.
That is extremely deep.
You can't climb a smooth mountain. So I got home and I wrote that down. You can't climb a smooth mountain.
Yeah.
And I thought, man, this could be a book. And within the next month, I probably outlined 10 chapters
Wow.
of that book.
Wow.
But the 10's got another bad thing about it. And then one night, I even to this day, which is not a great habit at all, but I'll sleep in spurts. So there are some times that I'll wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning and I either can stay in the bed till 6:30 or get up and work and watch TV or whatever, but I'm not going back to sleep.
Mhm.
And it has nothing to do about what I ate the night before. Okay. Well, one night I wake up about, or one morning, about 2:30 in the morning, and I cannot go to sleep. And I turn to TBN. It's called Trinity Broadcast Network.
We have it here in New Jersey.
Okay, all right.
Mhm.
And they have a program, I think, called Celebration that was on. Okay. And I said, well, let me go to that and just kind of watch it. And I turned it on, and lo and behold, there was a guy who I thought was the greatest, and still think was the greatest public speaker of all time, and that was Zig Ziglar. And Zig Ziglar was on Celebration, and he wrote a book when his daughter actually died,
Oh.
and he wrote a book. In fact, I'm googling it while I'm talking to you, but
Mhm.
he wrote a book called "A Grieving Christian."
Oh.
Okay, and he wrote that book. And he said he wrote it in a month or something like that. And I was watching it and I thought, man, you know what? Now, this was back before emails. I said, you know what? You ought to send him a letter. And I sent Zig Ziglar a letter telling him how much it touched my heart watching him that night on the show, et cetera, et cetera. And I said, you know, and there's a book on my heart. And thank you very much for being Zig Ziglar. Just something
Mhm.
complimentary like that. And about 2 weeks later, I decided to call his office. And when I called his office, his assistant, who still works for them today, Mrs. Majors, his assistant said, you're that young man who wrote Zig the letter, right?
Oh.
And I said, yeah. She said, Zig wants to meet you. I said, okay. And so we scheduled a time for me to go by the office and meet him. And so here's a guy who I've read most of his books. I've watched him on video, and I'm going into his office. I'm going to see Zig Ziglar. And I go in his office, and you know what? It was like talking to my grandfather. I walked
Wow.
in and I said, hello, Mr. Ziglar. He said, call me Zig. And he said, tell me about your book. And I had the introduction written, and I showed it to him, and he said, C.I. Dixon. He said, you didn't come up with this book. He said, God gave you this book. He goes, and if you don't write it, someone else will.
Whoa.
I said,
Okay.
I said, okay. And then from there on, he would reach out to me at least once every other month. How you doing on your book? Don't make me a liar. How you doing on your book? And then
Yes.
and then he'd give me tit points on just like, oh, it was not like he mentored me. It was not like I would call him and say, Zig, I got this problem. None of that. He would just call me and say, CI, whenever you get on stage and they got multiple speakers, he goes, make sure you know about the other people speaking. I said, well, why? Why, Zig? He said, because when people walk away from there, they don't remember who said what. He
Mhm.
says, if speakers say things that you don't agree with, don't get on stage with them. And he would just tell me just little bitty things. And then he started mentioning my book in his speeches. And I'm also in his autobiography. I didn't mean
Wow.
I didn't even mean to talk this long, but there's his autobiography. It sits on my
Mhm.
desk. And so he mentioned me in his autobiography. But it took me 10 years, Barbara Ann, to finish that book. And that book's only like 100 pages. And why did it take you 10 years? Because of the busyness of life.
Yes.
I mean, people say, why did it take you 10 years? Well, when you're running a business, you're raising children, you're doing this, you're doing that, you
Mhm.
really don't close the door and sit at a computer and hash out a book unless you're Steven Spielberg and someone's giving you $3 million to do it.
Yep.
Okay. And so I was doing it on the plane and places like that. But then the
Wow.
pandemic hit, and I'll bring this to a close. And when the pandemic hit, I couldn't travel. My clients couldn't have me there. And it was like, hey, again, my mother said, well, maybe it's time for you to finish that book. And that's when
Hmm.
I finished it.
Awesome. That is so awesome. And as much as I would love to talk about the Salvation Army and the Boys and Girls Clubs of America,
Oh,
we're at
gosh.
time.
Oh,
So,
oh, I'm
but
sorry. I went too long on
no,
my.
no, no. That just means we have to have you back. That's all. So,
No.
maybe the next book you have in you. Because,
Yeah, I got 5 more.
I was going to say, once you get that one out, there's always going to be another.
Yes.
So, um, but no, in all seriousness, thank you for the work that you're doing with those groups, especially the Boys and Girls Club of America. Really quick, if you just want to give a little plug for the work that you do with them and why.
Yes, thank you so much for giving me that opportunity. There's I only do free work for places like Salvation Army, Boys Club of America. Well, that's when I was there. It was Boys Club, but now it's Boys and Girls
Right.
Club. But groups that are doing something to involve our children and to improve their lives. And then also when you look at those groups, when you look at their when you look at their budget, most of their budget goes to helping those children. It
Yep.
doesn't go for salaries. It
Yep.
goes to helping those children. And Barbara Ann, the first time I ever played football with shoulder pads on, I was playing for the Boys Club of America.
Oh, I'm so glad we made sure that we had time for that because that's a huge full circle moment.
Yes. Because they can take a kid, and I grew up in the ghetto. Without going into a lot of detail, but it gave me an outlet, someplace to go every day to do something wholesome. And they really work to improve and impact a child's life.
Wow. Wow. So, anybody who would like to get in contact with you, we know that they can just Google you. And your contact information is also going to be in the notes below
Okay.
the links to access this on whatever platform you're on. But really quick, what's one of the easiest ways for people to get to you?
I think the easiest way is to go to www.cidixon.net. That's our website. From there, you can email me, you can phone me, you can look at my book, you can do whatever you want to do, or you could just email me at ci@cidixon.net.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to share a bit of story with us. And, you know, of course, you're always welcome to come back and talk to us again about any
Definitely.
future books that come out. And so thank you again. And for our audience, also, thank you for
Thank
tuning
you.
in. You're welcome. And thank you to our audience for tuning in. There are so many different options that you have out there that you could be listening to or watching. And so we do not take for granted that you took some time to watch our show or listen to it on whatever platform you happen to be accessing it. And please, share it with somebody else that you think that you could also benefit from this content. And also, please remember, whether you're looking to make changes in your life or your business or your company, your career, no matter how big or small, tune in again for more illuminating and inspirational conversations about pivots and and decisions that are made by guests such as C.I. Dixon, who went a very unique route to find his core purpose and passion and live it.